Hey, shalom, shalom, shalom lakam, which is peace unto you all. Anachna wahai barisha Allah with the Hebrew Israelites coming to you week in and week out through the spirit and power of Yahweh Bahasham Yahweh Shai to preach to you so-called Negroes, Latinos, Native Americans, West Indians, Haitians, Israelite foreigners. Nachamatam kayah malakot hashemayim kwa repent ye for the kingdom of heaven is at hand. First and foremost, before we get started, we want to give our praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham Rocha Kodash. While double honors to the elders and apostles of Great Millstone that taught us this truth and rule well. And much respect to you bros that they're pushing this truth with all righteousness and sincere shalom, shalom.
Shalom.
All right, so just as the lesson is entitled, it says AhlapBayath, which ha means the. Ahlap goes into an ox. All right, and it also goes into strength and it goes into first. All right, and then Bayath is a house. And reason being that it's AhlapBayath is because the word for alphabet derives from AhlapBayath in Hebrew. All right, and or Ahlap and Bayath are the first two letters. All right, in the Paleo Hebrew alphabet. So it's called AhlapBayath, the alphabet. And we're gonna go into letters Ha to Za. We covered over to from A to Ba, and then we did Ga to Da. So now we're going into Ha to Za. Could you zoom in just a little bit, Papa Kushab?
Let's see.
Yeah, the water. It's gonna cut the letter out.
Hold on.
That's good right there.
Okay.
So we're starting with Ha. All right, and it's right beside Da. So starting from right to left is A, Ba, Ga, Da, Ha, Wa. All right, and the Wa, Wa to Za, and we're starting with the Ha. So the Ha looks like almost like a correctly facing E, and that's why E pretty much is inspired by the Ha. But it says Hana is the word that corresponds with it. But it says the arms extended, and it says to behold. So the reason that why it says behold is because I'm gonna get this common definition for the word behold. All right, and this is the definition for the word behold, and it says to perceive through sight or apprehension, to see, to gaze upon. It says use an imperative, especially to call to attention. And pretty much is when something is being brought to attention. All right, it pretty much acts as a statement of faith, whether it's going to be something that's going to appear or something that's already there. So it's a statement of faith. So just to go into that point, can we get that article that had the prefixes and suffixes, Baba Kusha?
Okay.
And it says discover the holy language, the subtitle. You just scroll to where it says the Ha. Right there. So it says the prefix Ha or Hana means the. It says the letter Ha means be as in to exist or shall be as a statement of faith. It is commonly used as a prefix meaning the, which is the equivalent of saying be or exist as. So in English, when we say the, all right, something has to be existing. So to be like, okay, you'll say the phone. All right, well, it has to be a phone that you're referring to, or you might say the watch or the pencil or something like that, but it has to exist, So in English, it kind of limits you, whereas in Hebrew, all right, either it's going to exist, all right, or already exists, So again, it serves as a statement of faith first and foremost. But it says the letter Hana means be as in to exist or shall be as a statement of faith. It is commonly used as a prefix meaning the, which is the equivalent of saying be or exist as. Consider the following example. The English phrase, the tree, has a Hebrew equivalent that literally means exist as tree or simply be tree, So it has to be a tree that we're talking about for you to say the, or it has to exist as a tree for us to say the. And that's pretty much how it works in translation, But the only difference in Hebrew is that it can be a tree already, all right, or something is going to exist, all right, something's going to come to pass. So it's an element of faith that has to be there, because it's not just things that are here, it's things that are going to come to pass. And just to prove that point, could we go to Isaiah 65, the 65th chapter? And we'll start at verse 12.
This is Isaiah 65 and verse 12. It says, "Therefore will I number you to the sword, and ye shall all bow down to the slaughter. Because when I called, ye did not answer. When I spake, ye did not hear, but did evil before mine eyes, and did choose that wherein I delighted not."
Right. Essentially, talking about 2/3, scriptures say in Zechariah the 7th chapter, the Lord essentially cried unto 2/3, but they didn't want to answer, you see. So when in the time of 2/3 calamity, the Lord is going to leave them with no type of refuge. He's not going to answer, when they call. So it says, "Therefore I would number you to the sword, and and ye shall all bow down to the slaughter, because when I called, ye did not answer. When I spake, they did not hear. They didn't want to hear, because essentially the Lord offered out his hand via the prophets, you see, but 2/3, and they pulled away the shoulder. It says, "Ye did not hear, but did evil before mine eyes, and did choose that wherein I delighted not." They chose that prosperity mentioned in Proverbs Proverbs the first chapter and like the 32nd verse. It talks about security. All right, 2/3 chose that word went to prosperity, but in Hebrew it was security, so they chose to be prosperous in a false sense of security. They didn't want to choose the true sense of security. So therefore, they're going to eat of the fruit of their ways. They're going to essentially reap of what wickedness works. So the reward for wickedness is going to be destruction.
They essentially reap what they sow.
Right.
Want me to continue reading?
We'll go to 14.
Verse 13, it says, "Therefore thus saith the Lord power, because my servant shall eat, behold, my servant shall eat, but ye shall be hungry."
Right. It says, "Behold," so this is going into, this can be applied to, in the ancient world, you see, and then also in these times, that we're essentially in now, it says, "Behold," because either something's going to happen or it already exists, which this word is already existing, is just going to come to pass, all right, in the physical. So it says to behold, because that's a statement of faith, hana, behold, like it's going to come to pass. That's why it says, "Therefore thus saith the Lord, behold, my servant shall eat, but ye shall be hungry." Hey, it's going to be a lot of 2/3 is going to be out here starving and famished, but the Lord's servants, the elect, is going to be good, pursuant to Psalms 37, I believe it's verse 25. All right. Essentially, roughly paraphrasing, it goes into how the righteous have never been forsaken bread, roughly paraphrasing, so the Lord makes sure that, his men, the believers is good. We got different examples. When I believe it was Habakkuk, or it might have been Daniel inside it was Daniel in the lions, and I believe Habakkuk, delivered the food to him, and he was like, he don't know how to get to Babylon, so the Lord had an angel take him and then, teleport him there, and he was able to deliver the food, so this is a statement of faith, But he says, "Therefore thus saith the Lord power, behold, my servant shall eat, but ye shall be hungry. Behold," and even now, it's a lot of people out here, starving, and we're getting a glimpse of, the Lord essentially taking care of the hopeful elect, But it says, "Behold, my servant shall eat, but ye shall be hungry. Behold, my servant shall drink, but ye shall be thirsty. Behold, my servant shall rejoice, but ye shall be ashamed. Behold, my servant shall sing for joy of heart, but ye shall cry of sorrow of heart, and shall howl for vexation of spirit." You see, and we're seeing part of that now. Essentially the Lord is hopeful elect is essentially being joyous in heart. All right, while 2/3 are having sorrow of heart, because they didn't choose. Going back up to verse 12, you scroll up, Uncle Shaw. It says, "But did evil before mine eyes," in the latter, it says, and did choose that wherein I delighted not. So ultimately, as 2/3 had an opportunity to display, faith, they had an opportunity at this word. They just chose to take the wrong path. You see, so going back into verse 14, it says, "Behold, my servant shall sing for joy of heart, but ye shall cry for sorrow of heart, and shall howl for vexation of spirit." So ultimately, they made America, Babylon the Great, their rest. All right, so being that they did that, ultimately they're going to have to reap up the reward of that. They're not going to be able to, be delivered in these times. But the
Mm-hmm.
hopeful elect, the elect is essentially um, having faith in where it says "behold," because we're going into Hana or Ha, and Ha again goes into something that we're beholding. We're looking attentively at it. We're looking at the Lord work. Scriptures say that the Lord is known through His judgments. All right, then the scriptures say, "Stand in awe and sin not." What are we standing in awe at? When you go into that word for stand in awe, I believe it's let me get it real fast. I'm gonna read this too. If you ain't had nothing, bro.
No, I just wanted to make one quick point,
Mm-hmm.
because the scriptures, it talks about how man shall not live of bread alone,
Mm-hmm.
right? But by every word written in the book, roughly paraphrasing. So, the Most High is feeding the elect right now as we speak, through this word. And we see in 2/3, like you mentioned, who didn't choose the righteous path, they're not being fed. What I'm
Right.
saying? They're in a drought. They're malnourished right now. So when this
Mm-hmm.
time comes, like you mentioned, they're gonna be, vexing. I mean, they're gonna be vexed. They're gonna be howling. They're gonna be crying, and pretty much they're gonna be ashamed because they didn't choose the right path. They didn't choose to attain this knowledge when they had the time. But at the
Right.
same time, they also the Most High is going to take care of His men, make sure they're fed, and like actual literally fed, while everybody else is dealing with the famine. But
Right.
you got it.
God, this is Psalms 4 and verse 4 says, "Stand in awe and sin not. Commune with your own heart upon your bed and be still, Salah." So let me get this word for stand in awe, and it says rock gods, and it says to be excited. It says to excite oneself. It says uh, with any violent emotion, especially anger or fear. It says stand in awe. And I want to get this common definition for awe. All right, because this word has a manifold meaning, but essentially it means to have your emotion aroused. But it says be afraid. Then common definition, it says a feeling of reverential respect mixed with fear or wonder. All right, we're going into Hana, so to pretty much behold, so essentially, as the Lord is carrying out His wonderful works, essentially we're standing in awe. All right, and we're fearing. We're standing in awe at essentially the works that the Lord is essentially carrying out in the earth. And essentially going into Isaiah 65 and 13, it says, "Therefore, thus saith the Lord, behold, my servant shall eat, but ye shall be hungry. Behold, my servant shall drink, but ye shall be thirsty. Behold, my servant shall rejoice, but ye shall be ashamed. Behold, my servants shall sing for joy of heart, but ye shall cry for sorrow of heart, and shall howl for vexation of spirit." So saying these things come to pass, essentially, we're sitting in awe, all right, at the Lord, essentially feeding us. You see, in these times, you see, and then in those times, essentially we're going to be giving the Lord His just glorification, because of the works that He's carrying out, and He's going to be looking out for us, in those times.
Mm-hmm.
So from that, could you go back to the chart, Baba Kasha?
Con.
So it says we're at Ha, all right, Ha Na, which means to behold, all right. But it says the arms extended, because if the arms is extended, you like behold, like you're looking at something. So Ha Na, the arms extended, then it says behold, because you're looking attentively at something. Then it says the number five, and then it says Chamash, which is the number five, but then it also says power, you know. So could you also get Judges chapter 7 and verse 11? Because when we're going into each letter, all right, again, it corresponds with a different thought, a different number, all right, and a couple different words, you see, but it all has one root meaning in the letter, you know. So it says, Judges Shawapatyam chapter 7 and verse 11, it says, "And thou shalt hear what they say, and afterward shall thine hands be strengthened to go down unto the host." Then went he down to Parah his servant unto the outside of the armed men that were in the host. Baba Kushal, could you click on the word for armed men?
Con.
Yep, and it says Chamash. And it says to in battle array, arrayed for battle by fives, armed. Could you go into the Strongs or the excuse me the Jensenius? Yeah, right there.
Con.
And it says to excite anger. Excuse me, to excite anger, to be angry, to act harshly, uh, obstinately. It says brave, warlike, martial valor, to kindle with anger. All right, then it says can you scroll down some? It says ready, prepared for fighting. All right, then it says arrayed for battle properly, five parted as consisting of the center, the front and rear guard, and the two wings. So pretty much the reason why the number five goes into power is because say if you likened it unto like a battle, pretty much if you got somebody in the center, all right, you got someone in the center, you got someone in the front, you got someone in the rear, you got somebody to the right, you got somebody to the left. Pretty much you have 360 security. That's full circumspection. So that's why it goes into power. Even nowadays, with Esau's military and like his law enforcement stuff like that. If they was like maybe when they clear spaces and stuff like that, a lot of times they're moving like a diamond formation. They might have somebody in the center, or they might just have fours, but if they have somebody in the center, they can act as a someone like a pretty much overseeing pretty much the other four parts. But pretty much that goes back to the scriptures to where that's how people would move in battle array. If somebody was arrayed for battle, all right, they would have full 360 security. If you had a element in the middle, you had an element to the right, an element to the left, an element in the rear, and an element in the front. Because the front would have that range. Okay, then the right side will have that range, the left side will have that range, and the rear will have that range, and then the one in the middle can just oversee what's going on and kind of call the shots. And that essentially, again, that's why it goes into power. So again, we covered the letter Ha, all right, which means to behold. It's the number five. It goes into it's a statement of faith. That's why it's used for the in translation in the scriptures as the you see, because either something exists or it's going to exist. Did you have anything to add, bro?
La'a.
Con. So the next letter is going to be Wa. All right, Wa, which means to hook, to fasten, a nail, to add, to join. Pretty much something that's together. So in the scriptures, if you say Kawas Wa Shalchan, so a cup and a table. So and means you're adding something. It means you're joining two things together in a sentence. That's why it pretty much serves as and in translation. So just to get that, could we get let's get this precept. Let's get could you get Exodus chapter 38 and verse 28?
This is Exodus 28 and Exodus 38 and 28. It says, and of the 1,775 shekels, he made hooks for the pillars, and overlaid their chapiters, and filled them, and filleted them. How you say that? Filleted?
Yeah, fillet.
Okay, filleted them. Slakia.
Could you get that in the NLT?
Okay. So this is Exodus 38 and 28 in the NLT. It says the remaining 45 pounds of silver was used to make the hooks and rings and to overlay the tops of the posts.
Right. Could you get that word for hooks?
Okay.
Because essentially a wa serves as, that's why it says wa, because when you scroll down, it says a hook. It says the name of the sixth letter. Can you scroll back up, Uncle Shah? It says probably a hook, the name of the sixth Hebrew letter, and a hook is essentially something that you attach things to. So pretty much it was used on the tent, and this is going into the making of the tent. Because the hook will be used to fasten things together. That's why it says. Could you scroll down, Baba Shah?
Mm-hmm.
That's why it says hook, peg, nail, pin, and pretty much hooks would again be used to link things together. And just to get a better example, could we get Exodus chapter 20 and verse 8? And before you get that, could we go back to the chart real fast?
Okay.
make a quick point. So again, if we look at the chart, starting at the letter A, you got A, Ba, Ga, Da, Ha, Wa. Wa is the sixth letter. All right, we're going to Exodus 20 and verse 8 because it's going into the Sabbath. You see, in creation, all right, it took 6,000 years essentially for everything to be created. All right, and the powers rested on that seventh day. You see, because again, a day to the Lord is a thousand years, roughly paraphrasing. But pretty
Mm-hmm.
much, yeah, a day to the Lord is a thousand years. So that's why it's likened it to this right here. All right. Y is the sixth letter. So we got 6 days. We got 6 days that's the same. All right. And on the seventh, as we'll get, on the seventh, Zayan is a weapon. And what do you do with the weapon? You cut it off. So 6 days are the same. On the seventh day, it's cut off because it's different. So this is Exodus 20 and 8. And it says, remember to observe the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. Holy means to separate, set apart, So you got 6 days that's the same. On the seventh, it's cut off. You don't do the same things you do on the other 6 days. So it says you have 6 days each week. Or could you go back to the KJV Bible shop?
Oh yeah, kind of like it.
So it says Exodus Shamwath 20 and verse 8. It says, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy, keep it separate, it should be different from the other 6 days. It says, 6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy work, but the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy power. In it thou shalt in it thou shalt not do any work, thou nor thy son, nor thy daughter, thy maidservant, nor thy maidservant, or manservant, nor thy maidservant, nor thy cattle, nor thy stranger that is within thy gates. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea, and all and all that in them is, and rested the seventh day. Wherefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. To hallow something, that word should be quadash, which means to set it apart. So again, the Hebrew alphabet went from to ba to ga to da to ha to wa. That's six. All right, 6 days is the same. All right, on the seventh, it's cut off. Because it's different. It's not going to be joined with the rest of the six. You know, and that again, because the Lord speaks through similitudes. We got an example in the Hebrew alphabet. All right, and it says it again right here. It pretty much reiterates it. Because making it plain upon tables. So again, Y went to the number six. All right, means to join. All right, means to fasten. It means to essentially to nail something, because those 6 days are nailed together. All right, and then that leads us into the next point, because the Sabbath is the seventh day to where it's cut off. All right, it's not like the other 6 days. We're not supposed to work. We're not supposed to do our own pleasures on the Sabbath. It's supposed to be about the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
So from that, could you go back to the chart, Bubba Shah?
Kind
If you have nothing to add.
live.
All right. And on the seventh day, so you got A, Ba, Ga, Da, Ha, Wa, Za. All right, Zayan means to plow. All right, it also means a weapon, and it means to cut off, because with the weapon you cut things. With tools, you cut things. But seven also goes into Shabai, which is completion. So seven is a complete number. When we look at the days of the week, we got 7 days of the week. It's a complete amount. That's why the word for week goes into Shabbat. You see, because it comes from the number seven, because it's a complete amount of time. So could we get Bon Sirach 43 and verse 6? Because this is how we essentially number, our days. All right, and that also tells us, all right, when the new month comes in.
This is Bon Sirach 43 and verse 6. It says, He made the moon also to serve in her season for a declaration of times and a sign of the world.
Right. It says he made the moon also to serve in her season for a declaration of times, so the moon declares the times, that we in, so the moon tells us when the first day of the month is. All right, but then also from that first day of the month, 7 days after that will be the Sabbath. All right, and 7 days after that also will be, the new moon, you see, because the new moon tells us when the Sabbath comes in, so we'll get what, one, two, three, four. Um, if I'm not mistaken, what, four new moons, and then the next month comes in. It's like roughly 29 point something days, or 28 days or something like that. But pretty much it goes off of the moon. It pretty much tells us the first day. It tells us the seventh day, which will be the new moon. And the new moon is synonymous, all right, with the Sabbath. That's why it says serve as a declaration of times. You see, but then it says and a sign of the world. Because we got different signs. All right, pursuant to Genesis, somewhere in Genesis, it talks about they serve as signs. All right, we got this chapter, and I believe it's somewhere else, but pretty much the moon, all right, and the pretty much the bodies in the heavens, they serve as signs. All right, so it tells a major event is going to happen. So we might see a solar eclipse, we might see a lunar eclipse, or we might see shooting stars and things of that nature. You see, but specifically what we're going into right now is the moon. It serves as a sign as to something that's going to occur, all right, on the earth. That's how the Lord speaks, through signs.
Mm-hmm. Verse 7, it says, from the moon is a sign of feast, a light that decreaseth in her perfection.
Right. So from the moon is a sign of feast, because the feasts are, it essentially tells, all right, when these different feasts will be, you know. you know, pretty much all the feasts go into it's pretty much timed off of the moon. That's like um the feast, time clock,
Mm-hmm.
Some of them feasts, consist of like Purim, the Day of Atonement, they pretty much, again,
Passover.
yeah, the Passover, yep. But it says a light that decreaseth in her perfection, and you got groups that fumble upon this, but pretty much the moon that's why it says a light. The moon got its own light. It ain't reflecting off of the sun. The moon has its own light, and it says a light that decreaseth in her perfection, so it becomes perfect, all right, when it gets dark, all right, because it becomes perfect because when you go into the new moon, all right, the word for moon is yarach, all right, the word for new moon will be chadash, so it's renewed, it's become new, all right, and that essentially shows its perfection.
Mm-hmm. May I get a precept for you?
Mm-hmm.
This is Genesis 1 and verse 14. It says, in the Most High, or in the Alahayim said, let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven. See, it said lights. So it's not saying one light, it's the sun. So that's talking about the moon as well. The moon also has its own light.
Right.
So it says, let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day and the night. And let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and years. So that's just reiterating that point, right? The moon is used for to marking the months, marking the seasons, right? You can also even know what day it is just based off the size of the moon.
Mm-hmm.
It says, and let them be for lights in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth, and it was so. And it says, and the Most High made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also. So there you
Mm-hmm.
have it.
Pretty much, going into what Esau says in his so-called science. He'll say that the sun's light reflects off of the moon, but that doesn't make any sense, because then you wouldn't have day and you wouldn't have night. Essentially the two are disassociated. So the sun pretty much is the light, for the daytime, with the moon having its own light at night.
Mm-hmm. Con. Going back to Sirach 43 and verse 8, it says, the month is called after her name, increasing wonderfully in her changing, being an instrument of the armies above, shining in the firmament of heaven.
Mm-hmm. So it says it says the month is called after her name, because if you it's a lot of different languages, to where the month is called after the name of the moon, in English. I believe month goes back to it's either German or Dutch. And it pretty much sounds the same as month. Month comes from moon. Same thing in Hebrew is chadash. For the new moon. All right, and then it's also synonymous with the month. You see, because that month comes in with the new moon. All right, and then you know what it is in Spanish?
It's different. It's Luna.
Luna. Luna is the moon, right? What's month
Yeah.
in Spanish?
Mess.
Mess. Okay. But yeah, it's different languages. I know in Dutch, I believe it's manad. That's how you say moon, and also for the month, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it's also moon. You see, so it's the same across the board in different languages. But I'm gonna get this
Hmm.
too. This is Tahoyam Psalms 104:19, and it says he appointed the moon for seasons, the sun knoweth his going down. So when we talk about these two, the Lord essentially put up those bodies in the heavens, all right, and they have a specific purpose, which is not like it's not to be used as the heathen do. Essentially the heathen, they worship the celestial bodies, or excuse me, the bodies in the heavens. you know Pretty much they have a purpose, and the purpose is to be used for the seasons, the times, all right, and essentially, to give light upon the earth. But it says, this is Psalms, Tahaniam, chapter 104, and verse 19. It says he appointed the moon for seasons. Essentially, the moon has a job, to deal with the seasons. Essentially, the moon can tell you what season you're in too, you know. But it says the sun knoweth his going down, and pretty much when we talk about the sun, all right, if we went to could you pull up that the chart again, Bubba Shaw?
Con.
It says the sun knows it's going down. All right, the sun. All right, on that chart, if we go from Abba Gada Hawaza Chata Yakala Manasa Aipa Taza Kwa. All right, the fourth from the left on the bottom row, it says Kwap, which that goes into the Kwa goes into the sun, the Pa goes into the mouth speaks. So Kwap, the sun speaks, because if it was hot outside, the sun's gonna speak, like you step outside, it's gonna be hot as shit, so Quap, it says sun on the horizon, it says circle, time, and call. But if you look at the shape of the Quap, pretty much the sun, it rises in the east, which will be the right side of that stick at the bottom, and then it'll go around. So the sun knows it's going down in Psalms 104 and verse 19, because it's set on a specific pattern, whatever specific pattern the Lord has it set upon, you know. But yeah, the water, bro. Yahweh Bahasham, Yahweh Shah Bahasham, Chak Wadash Brakatah. Pretty much it says month is a borrowed word from German. It says in German the word month is manat. It says pronounced manat. The plural is manat, manet. So pretty much month is from German, But in German, you got the German version. Then you got one in Dutch. All right, then it's one in Hebrew. And it's a couple other different languages you see, but the Lord essentially showed those signs. All right, because the word for month, all right, essentially comes from moon. Because the moon dictates the times and seasons that we in. And uh, the moon shows the first day. All right, and shows the seventh day. And again we went into the number seven, the letter seven, or excuse me, the letter seven and also the number seven, which will be Zion, which means to cut off, because the Sabbath is different from the rest of the 6 days. All right, then Shabbai, which means goes into completion. If someone is satiated, that SA really should be a SHA, you see, because satiated or satisfy really derives back from SHA, which is the SHA, and Shabbai, which means completion, because if someone is satiated, they're complete, they're no longer hungry. That's why the scriptures say to don't be unsatiable or insatiable, because insatiable goes back to not completed. We should eat enough to get our fill, and not try to be overly like gluttonous or anything like that, which goes into
Hmm.
again the number of completion. But that's pretty much all I had, bro.
I'm just gonna finish it off with this one.
Okay, yeah.
Genesis 2 and verse 1. It says, "Thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all the hosts of them. And on the seventh day, the Alahayim ended their work, which they had made, and they rested on the seventh day from all the work which they had made. So yeah, in verse 3 it says,
Mm-hmm.
and the Alahayim blessed the seventh day and sanctified it,
Mm-hmm.
because that in it they had rested from all their work which the Alahayim had made, or created and made.
Can you get that
So yeah,
word for sanctify?
Khan, sanctified.
Quadash. And it says to consecrate, to prepare, to be holy. It says to set apart. All right, how else do you set apart things? You cut it off.
Right.
To consecrate it, to make it different from some. All right, well, I'm gonna separate these two. What do you separate with? You separate with Zayan. It's that weapon. Could you go back to it?
Khan.
The chart. So it says Abagada Hawaza. All right, the Wa number 6. You got 6 days. That's the same. Going into the days of the week. And on that 7th day, it's cut off. Zayan. Because with the weapon pretty much is a tool that you cut off with. And again, that represents the days of the week. But that was pretty much all I had, bro. If you had nothing else.
La.
La Marshana, which is to say again. We went into AhlapBayath, which is the alphabet, letters letters Ha to Za. Ha is to behold. Hana, it exists as a statement of faith, whether something's going to happen or it already happened. All right. Ha is also to behold. Ha is the arms extended. All right, the number 5, and also power. All right, Wa is and. All right, it serves as a nail, a hook, to join, to add. All right, it's the number 6, Shash. All right, and it also goes into man, beast, and sex. All right, Zayan, it's a tool. All right, it plows. It's a weapon. It cuts off. And then number 7, Shabai, and then number 7 also goes into completion. You see, so Adawan Tazah, Zabanaya Palu's will. That was a beautiful edification through the spirit. Wa Adawan Tazah, Adam Yash Yawam Tawab, Lord's will. You all have a good day. Well, we can go ahead and close it out by saying, Call Halayim La, Yahweh Bahasham, Yahweh Shai Bahasham, Rocha Godash. While double honor to the elders and apostles of Great Millstone that taught us his truth and rule well. And much respect to you, bros, that they're pushing his truth with all righteousness and sincere shalom. Shalom, shalom. Shalom, lakam, which is peace to you all. Shalom.
Shalom.